to left center field. Back it goes and gone. The 0-2 pitch. He struck him out swinging at 101. Swinging a drive, left field and deep. Back it goes and gone. And the Twins walk it off again.
I call it convenient timing or great producing. Then we have Cory Provus join us each and every Friday, especially after what happened last night, as we chatted about in our first segment. The Twins fall in extra innings to the Marlins, pretty much eliminating them from playoff hopes. It's not official, but as we say in golf, it's dormy with 3 down with 3 to go. Your immediate reaction just after what you saw last night?
You know, I normally I don't let wins or even losses kind of get to me too much. I really am one that, all right, game's over, come home and move on, and I go to bed without a problem. But last night was not an easy night. I Pearl Jam going in the car, some Rage music going in the car, and I'm glad there weren't many ballads that were playing, and it was a live show, so that was good. And then I couldn't go to sleep right away. That one was tough just to kind of look back on, and you know, I like you said at the top, are they eliminated? No, but they need a lot to go right. They have to win every single game against Baltimore, which is tough to do on its own. Then either the White Sox sweep the Tigers, doubtful. Or now the Braves can sweep the Royals. Now that is something that I'm looking at like, okay, that could happen because Atlanta has a lot to play for still. So there is that chance. But it's up to the Twins themselves. They have to win. They have to win. And just the way that they played last night, just the horrible execution that we saw in the later innings against a 100-loss team. And so that to me was deflating, and you felt it around the ballpark. You felt it. I felt it in the clubhouse before the game, just a deflating feeling with the Tigers and Royals already winning. And coming back in a way to win those games. I thought that was, there was this dark cloud that just seemed to be around the team and around the clubhouse even before they took the field, just based on what happened in those other stadiums. So, and then they picked the worst possible time to play their worst game of the year.
I watched the Tigers game yesterday, Cory, and Tampa was up late, and what Detroit has done for the last 6 weeks, they rallied and won late, and I just shook my head. I'm like, man, they just are not losing. And on the opposite side, the Twins are finding ways to lose. Last night, as you mentioned in the broadcast, and we showed it, had the winning run at third base in the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and couldn't get him in. Just nothing.
Yeah, I mean, just bad at bats. And the Marlins went to even the 5-man infield.
Yeah.
When does that ever work? And sure enough, Royce hit the ball right at the dude that came in off the bench, mind you.
Yeah.
I mean, Jose Sanoja wasn't playing center, and then he comes in and the ball went right at him. And so, but there were so many opportunities, 2 for 19 runners in scoring position, and time after time, just put the ball in play, sack fly, anything to save your season. And it just didn't happen. So, I'm curious how they bounce back tonight. Pablo has the ball tonight. It'll be his last regular season start. And so I think the crowd should be okay because, Pablo's been good. He picked a bad time to have a clunker.
Yeah.
His last start at Fenway Park. But, he's carried this team in the second half with his pitching and Bailey too. To me, yes, you can point to the bullpen. You can point to the pitching, the young arms, fine. But this team stopped hitting. That to me is what it boils down to, that there's a clear line of demarcation going back to August 18th when everything changed, and it comes back to offense and scoring, roughly 3 runs a game. Hard to win that way. Hard to win that way when you're relying on so many young arms. And it's not just one guy. That's the thing. And yes, Buxton, Correa, they were out fine, but they've been back. But just seeing everybody slump at the worst possible time, from Royce Lewis to Ryan Jeffers to Jose Miranda to Eddie Julian to Brooks Lee, you name it. I mean, it was a problem. Christian Vasquez, he even cooled off. Kyle Farmer, Matt Wallner, Trevor Larnach, those guys in September, They did everything
They're
they
great.
could,
Yeah.
but everybody else, it just at the worst possible time, just stopped hitting, and it's going to cost them.
I had this stat sent to me, which I know you already know, on Wednesday morning, talking about the hitting issues. Santana, 1 for his last 22. Miranda, 0 for his last 19. Margot, 1 for his last 15. Julien, 0 for his last 14. Jeffers, 1 for his last 19. Lee, 0 for his last 11. That's 3 hits and 100 at bats. You're not beating anybody with that.
I think there was a stat that we had, I believe, during the Royal Series in Kansas City a few weeks ago, where hitters, I think it was either 6 through 9 or 5 through 9 entering that game were combined 0 for their last 50.
Oof.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, that can't be right. And we looked at it, and yeah, it was. And this is what it was. And the Twins again did not do much in terms of adding players. They could have added
Yep.
Tommy Pham. They didn't do. I mean, there were periods to add guys. Whether that was the trade deadline, as the calendar flipped to September, didn't happen. I like the 26. I mean, thinking back to the roster, I thought the 26-man roster was really good. But then when you have to go beyond that, how's the depth? Very young, inexperienced, relying on a lot.
Yeah.
These are guys that have a high ceiling, but it's one thing to sprinkle 1 or 2 in. You're not sprinkling 5, 6, and 7, and I'm combining the pitchers in there as well. That to me is probably asking too much, and I think that's been a part of the downfall this year.
And Corey, the thing to me, and I think we hit on it last week, and I know you talked about it on the broadcast either Tuesday night or last night, was struggling with below 500 teams, which they ate them up early in the season, but losing series to the Reds, lose a series now to the Marlins. You messed around with the Angels. That's something they weren't doing the first 3 months of the year.
Nope, they were down. They were a team that struggled against winning teams.
Yeah.
Can't debate that.
Yep.
But they clobbered, and there was a path that still would get you to where you wanted to be, and that get in the postseason. If you have to do it by beating the White Sox 12 out of 13
Right.
times, great. And then you sweep the Angels in Anaheim, great. You beat up on the weaker teams, and that didn't happen. And for some reason, the National League this year, which I think for the first half of the year there was a lot of mediocrity.
Yes.
In the National League, where the Twins they won 18 and 28, I think, against the National League this year. And Milwaukee's powerhouse. That's a great team. You're going to play them because they're your rival. You're going to play them 4 times. Fine. They split. Actually, no, they lost 3 out of 4. Lost 3 out of 4 to Milwaukee this year. So that I get, but there were some teams out there like, boy, even the Cardinals down here, how the Twins lost that game. And
Yep.
you can go back, and if the Twins miss the playoffs here by a game or 2, there's going to be a lot of reflecting on games that got away the last 6 weeks. And the Cardinals game was a part of that. Remember Eddie Julian, a couple
Yep.
of misplays that were costly
Yep.
and ended up losing by 1. The Texas, San Diego, Cleveland multiple times, Kansas City, the primetime game with Bailey on the mound, losing that game late. That's going to stand out a lot. And we just haven't seen them steal as many as that have been stolen late in the season. So that certainly is a big part of the storyline for this team this summer.
And that's the thing you just shake your head at as well, where they were winning those kind of games, just they could not get a big hit, could not get out of an inning. And that's when it comes down to it, they're going to miss by, a couple of games. That's all it takes in a 162 game season.
Yep, it will. And just the lack of fundamental play, I think certainly last night is very apparent. And this one's going to sting. I mean, I hope that it still works out. It's not likely, but this one, Paul Molitor, one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received in my life. And I think this is applicable, Dom, no matter what profession you're in, sports, business, education, whatever, especially politicians. Listen to this one, because it's so apropos that I think it's great with the Twins team as they think back to what has gone on here. You may hear in the coming days, we'll turn the page. So Paul Molitor's line is, it's okay to turn the page, but don't forget what you read. And I like that line a lot. I use that when I speak to students because I think it's so good. You make a mistake, fine. Don't just turn the page. What do you learn? What do you learn from it? And that's got to happen here with the front office and the coaching staff when they dissect, okay, don't just turn the page and get ready for 2025. Take a good look at what has gone wrong as 2024 has moved along. Before you get to 2025, let's reassess 2024 so that it doesn't happen again.
The thing to me, they played also in a division with the worst team maybe in the history of baseball. Like if they don't win even as many games they did against the White Sox, we're having a whole total different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, but that also, it's fair. But then the Tigers and Royals, they're also not a playoff team.
Correct.
Without it.
Yeah.
Cleveland of all teams.
Yeah, I know.
Cleveland, I think, went 8-5. 8-5 against the White Sox. I think the Royals were like the Twins. I think and maybe the Tigers too. The Royals, I believe they beat them 12 times. Maybe Detroit 11. But that's also part of their storyline.
Yep.
But just look at, Kansas City goes into Washington against a bad Nationals team and takes all three.
What
It's
you
a bad
what
team.
you got to do.
And they
Yep.
won, and they're a contending team, did what they had to do, and won all three. Detroit, home against a roughly 500 Tampa Bay team, took all three. That's a
Yep.
part of it. The schedule, where there's some tough teams along the way, sure. But man, there were some winnable games against sub 500 teams, and they did not capitalize.
Let me go ask you one thing before we go to break. They win that game last Friday in Boston. Maybe, and you said it, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Maybe their win of the year. The rainout happens, and I don't know if it took away momentum because it's baseball, but then they get clobbered both games on Sunday. What? I know it's hard to wrap your mind around it maybe now, but like what happened there? They had a great win Friday, and like, okay, this is going to catapult them maybe the last 2 weeks, and it just didn't happen.
It's been odd because the Twins they haven't lost by like 3 or 4 runs too often. They've either lost in nail-biting 1 or 2 run games, or they lost by 10.
Yep. Yep.
It's the darndest thing. And it kind of summarizes this roller coaster ride that I've never experienced before with a team, where the streaks have been so apparent, and the good, the bad. And yet right now it's like, man, they're down by 8. There's another 7-run 4th inning or a 6-run 5th inning. And like, boy, this thing changed in a hurry. And I don't have the answer to that. I don't know why it's happened, but it's been so unusual. It's either been an excruciating, gut-punching 1 or 2 run walk-off loss, or they're getting blown out. On the flip side, the Twins haven't had many lopsided wins.
No.
They got one the other night against Miami, but that has been few and far between here since August 18th.
Let's break. We come back. One more segment with Cory as we talk about the last weekend of the season with the Orioles in town. See what happens with the Tigers and the Royals as well. Back with Cory Provus, our Twins wrap, right after this.
The difference, either winning the division, getting in, or missing out. And in the end, it really wasn't a factor. I mean, it's what saved. I think it's what put Detroit and Kansas City most likely in the playoffs, and I think kept the Twins certainly in the conversation, was how much they dominated Chicago this year.
By the way, they're red hot. They swept the Angels, so they're staying on 120 wins, but they're one away from setting the all-time record for most losses.
And the White Sox have their best guy going tonight. I mean, Garrett Crochet is pitching tonight.
Okay.
So there's that. There's that to put your hat on, but yeah, this may sound far-fetched, but I do have a bit more confidence that the Braves will sweep the Royals than I do the White Sox sweeping the Tigers in Detroit. I just have a little bit more confidence that Atlanta might do it.
Well, in the National League is crazy. We broke this down yesterday because of the hurricane. The Mets and Braves now may have to come back and play Monday, and likely are going to have to come back and play Monday to determine maybe who's in the National League playoffs. And you mentioned Atlanta's got 3 monster games. With each of those games matter for Kansas City and Atlanta. The fact that I'm a little peeved that baseball didn't have, I don't know, some meteorologists figure out there's a hurricane coming and maybe adjust the schedule a little bit to figure that out.
Move it a little bit. Yeah, that's going to cause a headache, certainly for Atlanta. And when does Chris Sale pitch? I mean, when does he go? Because that's their guy. He's going to win the Cy Young this year in the National League. So when do they slot in Sale? Do they have to do it Sunday? Do they have to do it? That's going to be a very telling question because he's so good. But that ballpark is just awesome, and the crowd is going to be going nuts.
Yeah. So
Kansas City and Detroit, their magic numbers down to 1. But yeah, Who knows? But hopefully the Braves can. The Braves own the Twins, and hopefully they can do the same thing against the Royals.
I wanted to ask you as well. Yesterday was quite the scene in Oakland with them playing their final game in the Coliseum. And I know we've spent plenty of time. The ballpark was long past needing renovation or a new stadium, but the fans there were always great. I mean, some of the great baseball players, I went through a list of them, Corey, earlier in the show, have played in Oakland. It's going to be weird when they play in a minor league stadium for the next 3 years, and then maybe they get to Las Vegas. It's just going to be weird without Oakland there next year.
You can't tell if you just grab somebody off the street and said, "I know nothing about Major League Baseball. Tell me the whole story about how it all started." You cannot tell the story without incorporating the Oakland Athletics. You can't. There's just 4 championships and the Hall of Famers that played there. Yeah. It's a vital part of the game and the game's history. And we were watching the final few innings in the booth yesterday, and I was thrilled that the A's won. But then it hit me when you see the shots of these fans with tears in their eyes, knowing they're like, "Hey, these kids, my team's leaving. Well, why is my team leaving? Why do they have to go? I want to root for my team, and now they're leaving." So it's so sad, and it was preventable. And John Fisher, terrible person. I don't know him, and I'm glad I don't, because clearly he could have done more.
Yeah.
And I think Major Base, I think ownership too across the game could have done more to not make this happen, to keep Oakland there, to keep find out every other place has found out a resolution to build the stadium. Come on.
Yep.
Put your heads in the same room, come up with an agreement that everybody likes, figure it out. Not the first time that ownership and a city will have to come together in financing a new ballpark.
Right.
It's happened. Come up with a way to keep Oakland and keep the A's there. And it didn't happen. And it's sad.
Yeah.
I thought the crowd was awesome. But it hit me yesterday seeing just tears flowing from fans of all ages and races and genders because, they're gone. And going there, the Coliseum was a dump. But you know what? It was their dump.
Yeah.
And they took pride with it, and they liked it. And it was hard to win there. When that team was clicking, it was hard to win there. Those fans made it fun each and every time we got a chance to go out there.
2 last things before I let you go. What's your gut tell you? Did they ever play a game in Las Vegas? Do you think that happens?
I do. I think it happens at some point. I don't think it may, I saw that in that contract that they have with Sacramento, that 3 years with an option for a 4th. So I'm more on that side of it than I am never happening. I think there's just too much momentum in Vegas, and the groundwork has already started. So I think they end up there, but I'm not sold that it's going to be in 2028.
Yeah.
For 2029. So I think this is going to take a bit longer than I think.
Last thing, we saw what the Rangers and the Diamondbacks did last year. What team would you say or teams have? It seems like Detroit would be one of those. What other one to you could get hot and maybe win this thing?
The Mets, Francisco Lindor's hurt right now, but Lindor's had a great year.
Yep.
And if the Mets can find Arizona's cooled off for a little bit, I think San Diego can go on a run.
Okay.
I think San Diego, that lineup that we saw, that they have Dylan Cease, they have Tatis back. I think San Diego would be a dangerous team right now to play in any National League format. But selfishly, I want the Dodgers to go pretty far because I want to see Ohtani and he's going to play in the postseason for the first time. And to see this incredible, incredible athlete on the October stage is wonderful for the game. So I hope that the Dodgers have a lengthy run. And I'll tell you what, an Ohtani Judge World Series would do wonders for interest in the game. It really would.
Yep.
They would have ratings that they haven't had probably. I might be a little biased here, but since the Cubs, beat the Guardians in the World Series in 2016, I think that if it's Ohtani and Judge in the World Series, Dom, I think that might set some records that they haven't sniffed in a long time.
That might be all right. Have a great call the next 3 games. Maybe we see something miraculous happen. Appreciate the time as always. We'll do it one more time next week, all right?
Thanks, Dom. See you, buddy.
Cory Provus, voice of the Minnesota Twins on Bally Sports North. His appearance is brought to us by Weldon's Tire Service out of Lisbon. Appreciate that each and every Friday. And, again, what else do you say? they're where they're at. They've earned every part of it, of being 3 out with 3 to go. Just shake your head at it. We'll break. We come back. Big second hour on tap. The boss is coming in. Not Bruce Springsteen, but he's got some opinions, and he wants to be known. We'll do that when Hot Mike Hour 2 begins after this.